guys, today we are starting with a new chapter, A Truly Beautiful Mind, class 9th. In this chapter, it is basically a small autobiography of Albert Einstein. So let's read what does this chapter tell us about him. Albert Einstein, in the first paragraph we see where was Albert Einstein born. So Albert Einstein was born in Germany's city of Ulm on 14 March 1859. So it is telling about the date and time of Albert Einstein when he was born. So Albert Einstein was born on city of one of the city of Germany named as Ulm, and on 14 March 1859. Without any indication that he was destined for the greatness, what does this line tells us that there was no indication. मतलब हमें it is used like a phrase here that without any indication that his destiny was designed for greatness. On the contrary, his mother thought Albert Einstein was a freak. His mother thought Albert Einstein was a freak because when Albert Einstein was born, his head was unusually big, and due to this largeness of his head, his mother must have thought that this is not a normal child which has born. At the age of 2.5, Einstein still wasn't talking. So it was a high time when a child talks, when he learns to speak or utter some of the words or even few sentences. But at this point of time also, Einstein as a child was not able to talk. When he finally did learn to speak, he uttered everything twice. Like he used to, हम बोलते हकला जाना, कि हर चीज़ को दो तीन बार रिपीट करना. Einstein did not know what to do with other children. Means he doesn't know what to play, or maybe he used to find all these things really not very good or not of his taste. So, but the other children used to think that he is a very boring person. So they used to call him brother boring. There is a very famous incident here. Like Einstein didn't speak for 2.5 years, but first time he spoke that the soup is very hot. While listening to the sentence, their mother and father reacted like, if you knew how to speak, then why didn't you speak? So Einstein said that because before this everything was nice. So this was in itself a very new thing to them, like a person would not speak for 2.5 years because everything was nice. So this was an incident which shows that yes, he was something, a sort of a different kind of human, means who doesn't have basic we can say basic needs, or वी कैन से जिसको बहुत ज़्यादा मतलब नहीं है कि नहीं मेरे को बोलना है या फिर मेरे को एक्सप्रेस करनी है चीज़ें. On the next page, here we say, so the youngster played by himself much of the time. So he do not used to play very much games that time youngsters would have played. He was a sort of a person who used to keep himself away from all of these things, and he was mostly alone. He especially loved mechanical toys. Looking at his newborn sister, Maza is the name of his newborn sister, he said, fine, but where is her wheel? So what does this line tells us? That he was really fond of toys, and he couldn't really guess that whether his newly born sister was a human and she was not a mechanical toy. But still he asked that where is her wheels? A headmaster once told his father that what Einstein chose as a profession wouldn't matter because he will never succeed at anything. The headmaster of Einstein once called the Einstein father to tell him that he would never achieve success in his life. Age of 6, because his mother wanted him, he later gifted an amateur violinist. So his mother wanted him to learn violin, but he pursued violin as his mother said, and after some time he became an amateur violinist because he was not very skillful. We cannot say professionally, but yeah, he was making a really good sound of violin. But Albert Einstein was not bad pupil. He went to high school in Munich where Einstein family had moved when he was 15 months old. So, so before in the page we saw that he was born in Ulm, but after when he was 15 months old, his family shifted to Munich. So here only he did his high school and scored good marks in almost every subject. Einstein hated the school regimentations. Means basically the Einstein didn't like the school atmosphere, or we can say the rule and regulation discipline. It is related to Rabindranath Tagore, where we see that he also built Shanti Niketan because he didn't like the rule and regulation of the British time. So it is not anything related with British, but basically I'm just correlating things that Einstein also didn't like the way the teachers teach, or basically the education system. Einstein hated the school regimentation and often clashed with the teacher, so he used to argue with the teacher. At the age of 15, Einstein felt so stifled that that he left the school for good. So मतलब age 15 तक उन्हें ये लगा कि now it's high time I should leave the school, because he was not very fond of schools. So he left the school for good. मतलब कुछ अच्छा होने के लिए उन्होंने स्कूल छोड़ दिया. The previous year, Albert's parents have moved to Milan. Means when Einstein was 14 years old, because here we have got a reference of 15. So when Einstein was 14 years old, his mother and father had left him with some of the relatives, because they have, after a prolonged discussion, Einstein got his wish to continue his education in German speaking Switzerland. So after leaving the high school, basically Einstein pursued maybe his relatives or parents to learn in Switzerland, where in a German speaking university in a city which were more liberal than Munich. Means basically the education system, or we can say atmosphere, was more liberal, means that was not so strict at it was here in Munich. Einstein was highly gifted in mathematics, as we get reference a lot of time, mathematics, and interested in physics. And after finishing school, he decided to study at a University of Zurich. But science wasn't the only thing that he appealed to dashing young man with the walrus moustache. So here dashing young man and walrus moustache is giving us basically a picture how the Einstein used to look. He was not only pursuing science, but let us see what he really pursued. He also felt a special interest in the fellow student. Okay, so in previous pages we have got to know that in earlier time, in his young age, he didn't wanted many friends, or he didn't had many friends. But here after high school, he has got a new friend. What is his name is Meliva Merrick, whom he was found to be clever creature. So according to scientists, she was a clever creature. This young Serb had come to Switzerland because the university in Zurich was one of the few in Europe where women could get degrees. So this person was, whose name is Meliva. She was very ambitious. She was also as ambitious as as Einstein, and she was also very conscious about her studies. So she had come to Switzerland because at that time maybe some of the universities, or most of the universities, wouldn't give degrees to women. So here in Zurich, the university in which Einstein and Meliva were learning, that university gave the degrees to women as well. Einstein saw in her at an ally against the Philistines those people in his family and at university with whom he was constantly at odds. So basically Einstein was always a person of physics or maths, or basically we can say study. So he found himself odd one out in the people discussing the daily things. So with Meliva, he didn't find like that. He found that no, our topics are same and we are much interested in studying what we are doing. The couple fell in love. The letters survive, in which they put their affection into word, mixing science. So in their letters also, they used to some tint of science with the tenderness. Wrote Einstein, "How happy and proud I shall be when we both have brought our work on relativity and victorious conclusions. So Einstein has proposed a theory of relativity, due to which only he got very successful and was firstly known for that. So in the letter he was writing that I am so proud that we both will be working together on the theory of relativity. In 1900, at age of 21, Albert Einstein was a university graduate but unemployed. He was unemployed even though he was a university graduate. He worked as a teaching assistant, gave private lessons, and finally secured a job in 1902 as a technical expert in the patent office of Berlin. So he was first a teaching assistant, then he was also giving his private lessons, but finally in 1902 he got a proper secured job of technical expert in the patent office of Berlin. While he was basically, what was his work? His work was to assessing other people's invention, maybe guiding like say a junior post. Einstein was actually developing his own ideas in secret, while he was supposed to assessing people, but he was in secret doing working on his own inventions. Einstein, he is said that jokingly called the desk drawer at the Bureau of Theoretical Physics, means whatever documents he used to find, he used to keep in his desk drawer. So when he became famous, or whenever he has given this line, he said that my desk drawer used to be the Bureau of Theoretical Physics, because all my important documents were kept in my that single drawer. One of the famous paper of 1905, Einstein's special theory of relativity, according to which time and distance were not absolute. So before this theory of relativity, in the world of science, time and distance were considered as absolute. But after this special theory, time and distance were not considered as absolute. Instead, two perfect accurate clocks will not continue to show the same time if they come together again after a journey, if one of them have been moving very fast relative to the other. So this says that if a clock which is showing same time now must not, it is not means compulsion to them that they will show the same time if one of them is moving faster than other. From the followed, the world's most famous formula was described, the relationship between mass and energy, E is equal to mc square. So due to this theory only, we got a very famous formula, E is equal to mc square, which is related to mass and energy. Here we got an instant. When you sit with a nice girl for 2 hours, it seems like 2 minutes, and when you sit on a hot stove for 2 minutes, it seems like 2 hours. That is relativity. So basically he is giving an example for his relativity theory, that how does a time pass when you have good things, and how does the time do not pass when you have bad things. Next page we see, while Einstein was solving the most difficult problems in physics, his private life was unraveling. Basically, when his professional life was going smooth, his personal lives were not going very smooth. Albert had wanted to marry Mileva right after finishing his studies, but his mother was against of this. So mother was against of marrying Mileva to Albert Einstein, because she thought that Mileva was 3 years older than her son, was too old for him. So she was also bothered by Mileva intelligence. She is a book like you, his mother sensed. Einstein put the wedding off. So because his mother wouldn't like, or he was not approving basically their marriage, so the Einstein called off his marriage. The pair finally married in January 1903, but after maybe he had persuaded his mother. So after that calling of the marriage, he then finally married to Mileva in January 1903 and had 2 sons. But few years later only the marriage flattered, because marriage was not very stable. The marriage was not a happy marriage. Mileva meanwhile was losing her intellectual ambition, Becoming an unhappy housewife after years of constant fight, the couple finally divorced in 1919. So basically, Meliva, in the starting, we have only seen that Meliva was a very ambitious girl who liked to do research and propose theory with Einstein. But after marriage, Meliva was not left with so much ambition in her. She was becoming an unhappy housewife, which Einstein maybe wouldn't like. So they divorced after constant fighting. But even on same year, Einstein married another person who was his cousin Elsa. Einstein's new personal chapter coincided with his rise to the world fame. So till 11th para, we have seen that how some of the incidents of personal life of Einstein, and mostly about his theories, his achievement. But from the next paragraph, we are going to see how Einstein became a worldwide inspiration, or how Einstein basically became a revolution, or as a we name as a good citizen person. Einstein Einstein's new personal chapter coincided with the rise of world fame. So here we say how did he got fame. In 1915, he had published his general theory of relativity. So in 1950, he proposed general theory of relativity, which provided a new interpretations of gravity. So because of this theory also, the new concepts of gravity came. An eclipse of sun in 1919 brought a proof that it was accurate. So during this time in 1919, a sun eclipse was, and everything was the theory saying about the gravity, space, or relativity was proved well correct by this eclipse. Einstein had correctly calculated in advance the extent with which the light from the fixed stars would have deflected through sun's gravity in field. This is the scientific term, like how does a light get deflected. So this calculation was very correct, made by Einstein, and it was proved when the eclipse was done. The newspaper proclaimed his work as scientific revolution. Why did they proclaim like this? They proclaimed because before this everything was not given much consideration. Like before, time and distance were absolute, but after his theory the time and distance were not absolute. So basically he was removing all the old faults and was proposing new things. So a scientific revolution was coming because of his ideas. Einstein received a Nobel Prize for Physics in 1921. He was showered with honors and invitations from all over the world and lauded by the press. So obviously when you will get Nobel Prize, the press would be running before you. Everyone would wanting your, means you act as a fame. You are a celebrity. When the Nazi came to the power in Germany in 1933, Einstein emigrated to US. So Einstein, from we have seen from the early things also, that Einstein never believed in discipline and he didn't wanted so strictness. So when Nazi came to power, Einstein left Germany and came to US. 5 years later, the discovery of nuclear fission in Berlin had American physicists in uproar. So World War II was coming, and we have seen that World War II ended when US dropped atom bombs on Japan cities Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So that nuclear fission invention was in Berlin, which gave American a sign of victory, or we can say a idea how to use this bomb. Many of them had fled from fascism, just like Einstein had, and now they were afraid that Nazi could build the atom bomb. So all the scientists were now very afraid that they have found the nuclear fission in Berlin, so maybe they can make atom bomb. Next we get, at the urging of colleagues, Einstein wrote a letter to American President Franklin D. Roosevelt on 2 August 1939, in which he warned a single bomb of this type exploded through a port might very well destroy the whole port together with some of the surrounding territories. His words did not fail to make an effort or have an effort. The Americans developed the atomic bomb in the secret project of their own and dropped on the Japanese cities Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Here we see that basically Einstein wrote this letter as a warning to the president of America to basically alert him from the consequences when if they will make an atom bomb. He explained to them how harsh the atom bomb can be and how drastic or how explosive it is, but they took this letter as their key to atom bomb, and they made the atom bomb and dropped to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Einstein was deeply shaken by the extent of destruction. So Einstein himself felt very regretful that why this happened, because he thought that science can only be used for inventions, not for destruction. But using science like this was really traumatic for Einstein. This time he wrote a public missive to United Nations, in which he proposed the formation of world government. Unlike the later Roosevelt, this made no impact. So when there are questions asked that whether it was a positive effect of the letter of Einstein to Franklin D. Roosevelt. So here no, there was no positive effect, whereas they took this letter to the key of their mission and found the theory to make atom bomb and dropped it to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because they have now got the idea that how explosive this can. So in urge to win the war, they did this. So that letter was given a consideration, no matter in negative view only, but it was given a consideration. But now when Einstein wrote another letter on forming of world government, it was given no consideration and made no impact. But over the next decade, Einstein got ever more involved in politics. But now Einstein was even more involved in politics. But over next decade, Einstein got even more involved in politics, agitating for an end to the armed build-up and using his popularity to campaign for peace and democracy. So he was using his popularity, his fame, his viewers or his fan as a medium to end the arm up and wanted peace and democracy for world. When Einstein died in 1955 at age of 76, he was celebrated as a visionary and a world citizen much as a scientist genius. So why he was celebrated like that? Because before the invention of atom bomb only, he said that atom bomb will be really destructive. So this gave him a visionary, a world citizen, because he wanted peace and democracy. Despite being a scientific genius, he wanted world peace and democracy. He participated as an active citizen in the world politics for the betterments of things after World War II. So besides celebrated as scientific genius, he was celebrated as visionary and world citizen after his death in 1955 at an age of 76. Here we end this beautiful chapter, the autobiography, and from this chapter we have got to see what an active citizen, what an educated citizen can be. Thank you for watching my video. Kindly like it, share it and subscribe to my channel.